What's up, you hackers? Welcome to CS Joseph Podcast, Acolyte Edition. I'm your host, CS Joseph. And today's question is, how can I, as an INFP, improve my social skills such that when I speak, people can actually hear me, or people are actually going to take me seriously? Great question. Important question. This is an extroverted thinking inferior question. Definitely something INFPs tend to struggle with. But basically, it comes down to a lack of confidence. It's so interesting because extroverted sensing is the confident question, and INFPs have extroverted sensing trickster. So they never actually know what they should be confident in, or have confidence in, or display confidence in. That can really suck. It often does suck for them on a regular basis. And with that, it ends up becoming this big debilitating problem where the INFP oftentimes is just silent, especially among their social circle, or they don't even bother going out in public. They don't even bother socializing with other people because of just this gripping fear that they're not being social like everyone else, because they don't know about what they should actually be confident in. Now, granted, I've always told INFPs, like, hey, if you want to develop a valuable opinion, be well read. One of the bartenders down here, he's an INFP, is at the Crown and Thistle bar specifically. Good guy. His name's Andrew. He's one of the most well-read people in the locale. And given that he's a bartender, he oftentimes is able to have philosophical discussions with people, and he's consistently practicing his craft of gaining that confidence and trying to identify what he can actually be confident in based on the things that he's read, because he's read so many different topics, so many different nonfiction topics, that he's able to interface with each and every individual customer that he has that comes to his bar, which is an amazing thing to watch. Last time I had a discussion with them debating the finer points of Kant as well as Nietzsche, and then bringing that down to Dario Nardi and actually Carl Jung, and stating that basically, how can Kant be correct when compared to Plato's Republic, who talks about the four temperaments: guardians, artisans, thinkers, and idealists, according to Plato's Republic, which is what we use in the type grid basically to help identify individual types. And he went on to say how he agrees with Kant and how he agrees with communistic ideology, because that's very natural for an NF type to do, is to be espousing communist ideology. And I explained to him, well, if guardians are in charge, then you have oligarchy. If artisans are in charge, then you have gang mentality. You also have anarchy, basically, where the world is ruled by gangs, essentially, or tribes. Basically, it's tribalism, right? Then you have the thinkers, and when they gain control, it becomes an autocracy, also known as totalitarianism or dictatorship. But then when the idealists have control of society, then they bring about communism. And my main point is that according to Plato, right, is that it doesn't matter. When one temperament gains power within a society, and having this discussion, with this INFP, because its cognitive origin is authority, also known as power, right? All of a sudden, he started to realize that it doesn't matter who's running society, they all do it wrong. And then an ideal utopia society within the concept of this discussion would actually mean that all of them would be represented. 1 second. Yes, go ahead. Liza's going to ask me a question, so I'm going to answer her on the live stream. So, anyway, the point is that here's the thing. You have to learn how, as an INFP, to ultimately overdo it. You have to overdo it. It's not about having overconfidence. It's about overdoing your experience. overdoing the various topics that you read. You need to become well read as an INFP, because that will make you a more rounder person as an INFP, which means you will be able to contribute to topics that come up in the concept of social interaction. Yes, it is, but just for today. So Laser Gun is cooking right now, and she wanted to know if I could have a certain food, and so yeah, there we go. That's cool. It's nice of her to ask. I really like when she asks, because, you know, let's be honest, having me around is really difficult when it comes to food, because I measure all of my food, and I have a very strict diet to a point. So I don't harm myself, because I don't want to bring back my autoimmune liver disease, because I like keeping it in remission, right? So I have to be very careful about what I eat. Very careful. Almost militant about it, honestly. And oftentimes I've been labeled as a very controlling person by people, especially women in my life, when it comes to that, because I have these food limitations. And not only that, because of the presence of my personal body dysmorphia, if I don't measure my food or track my food on a regular basis, I'll actually become very depressed. So, but anyway, it really comes down to the INFP realizing what I can contribute to a discussion. It's extroverted feeling nemesis, because it's okay, how am I going to contribute? How am I going to give something of value that people will find valuable in this social context? They don't know what other people have experienced, so what they need to do is they need to share from their life experience. They need to share from the things that they've read, the various topics that they are well read on, and share those topics with other people. And then as a result of that, because they are so well read, they'll start to realize, because the extroverted thinking inferior will compare themselves to other people that they are socially around, and they'll realize that people are not as well read as they are. This is not a bad thing. They can take pride in the amount of effort that they have invested towards being well read in those particular situations, right? And as a result of having that pride, they know that they can basically, because they've spent so much time, so much effort, many years of reading basically, that they can actually have an opinion about almost anything that's being discussed in the social interaction. And then they just need to force themselves through self-discipline, basically, to share their opinion in a social setting. And they know they can have confidence in it, regardless of their extroverted sensing trickster, because they know that they're way more well-read compared to every other person in their social circle. And because of that, that allows them to share their opinion loudly and not be so quiet about it, because they have that confidence, because they know that through their introverted sensing child, they have way more life experience or way more experience researching than any other person in their social circle. And that's ultimately what happens. That's ultimately how they can contribute. However, that's the prerequisite for being able to pull this off. That's the prerequisite, right? That's the prerequisite that they have. That's the prerequisite they need to do, being well read. However, they still may need some practice with speaking, which my final recommendation would be, go to Toastmasters, become very well read on a topic, but then practice giving speeches. You know, Ron Paul, he's an INFP, he's a politician, right? Was a politician. And as a politician, you got to get used to giving speeches somehow. This helps you develop your extroverted sensing mastery instead of just a trickster all the time. So you go and practice, and you go to Toastmasters, for example, and you learn how to give speeches. Because you'll realize that when you're sharing your opinion, you're sharing about the topics that your life experience, or the topics that you are well researched on and well read on, you'll realize that having that giving a speech capability is important. Why? Because it almost ends up, when you have the floor in your social circle, when everyone's listening to you basically and you're speaking, it's almost like you're actually giving a speech every single time, right? So you need to be okay with giving a speech. And you need to assume with your TI demon if you have to, that anything that you share in front of your social circle will end up being just like a speech. So going to Toastmasters, for example, is just one example of how you can do it. Also, anything that has to do with public service or anywhere that would place you in a position where you are to give that speech, that's really important. Or maybe you could become an INFP content creator. Maybe you wrote a book as a result of the research you've done. Maybe it's a fantasy book that you wrote as a result of all of your years in reading fantasy, because INFPs love fantasy. They're the biggest consumers of fantasy. And maybe they create a YouTube channel where they're just reading off one chapter at a time from a book they themselves wrote, basically. And it gives them practice. INFPs exist to provide feedback to other people through their valuable opinion. But it's their responsibility to make their opinion as valuable as possible. That's the point, right? That's how it works. But if you're not going to read, if you're not going to be doing just nonfiction instead of just fiction, well, you're not going to really have a valuable opinion. You're not even going to be able to have the opportunity to utilize that SE mastery speech skill to begin with. And that's definitely something you're going to learn how to do. You need to make an introverted sensing child habit of delivering speeches, even in your small social groups or small social settings. Just because you don't have an audience of 50 people, it's no different than you having an audience of 2 people, okay? There's no difference. But extroverted thinking inferior believes that there is a difference. No, there isn't, because as John Bodine says, and is also biblical, he who can be trusted with little can be trusted with much. If you can be trusted with delivering a speech of some kind to people within your social circle, a small social circle of 2, let's say you go out with 2 friends, then you can also deliver the exact same dissertation or narrative to a bunch of people, right? This is how you develop, or one way that you develop extroverted sensing mastery, okay? That's how you actually go about doing it, right? That's what INFPs need to be aware of and be okay with doing on a regular basis, okay? And if you're not doing that, well, then there's a problem. A really, really big problem. So make sure you do. Make sure you deliver that speech. Make sure you are there for your friends. Make sure you are there for your people. Because here's the thing. If you don't do this and you give into the grip of fear, for one, you're going to miss out on opportunities for yourself because you're not being social. But at the same time, you're never going to feel good about yourself because you're always going to believe that your opinion doesn't matter. When the reality situation is your opinion absolutely does matter. It is insanely valuable. But if you're not practicing delivering those narratives, delivering those dissertations, as a result of being well read, as a result of getting in life experience and getting out of your comfort zone, then you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot and you'll never develop the social skills necessary to be able to take you to the next level, right, as an INFP. This is something Frank James, as an INFP, who is a very popular MBTI YouTuber, for example, Frank James has gained mastery of. As much as Michael Jackson, an INFP, gained mastery of, or Bruno Mars, right? Bruno Mars also. Could be wrong about Bruno Mars's type though. Might be wrong, but I believe he's an INFP. I may have to retype him. Since the science has advanced so much, we have so many more angles to look at everything now. So I might have to retype that guy. But my current belief is that he is an INFP, similar to Michael Jackson. But the point is, the point is, no, Frank James is not an INFJ. He claims he's an INFJ. He is not an INFJ. No, he is not. I was on the phone with him one day. He is an INFP. He's an INFP. He's trying to utilize his expert sensing mastery to give a performance on his YouTube channel. He mistyped himself. INFPs, you cannot trust what people say in terms of their self-typings. In fact, you cannot really trust what anyone says in terms of their self-typings. Even I was not self-typed. For like 6 years, I worked really, really hard because I started learning Jungian analytical psychology at 21 in an effort to save my marriage. And for 6 years after that, I believed I was an INTJ. Even my first mentor who gave me the type grid with the first two vectors, which is temperament, which is from Plato's Republic, versus interaction styles, also known as expression styles from Linda Barron's. Those two vectors only on the type grid. And even he believed I was an INTJ. Well, it's because I'm unconscious developed, right? So it's very easy to make those claims. But no, he is not an INFJ. He is an INFP, actually. So for those of you who actually think he's an INFJ, he is not. And it's so funny how oftentimes we have INFPs within this community who think they're INFJs because of Frank James. But it's not true. That's why I created this episode. How do INFJs compare to INFPs? Watch this lecture. It's 90 minutes long because I had to hammer this home, okay? Because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And wouldn't you INFPs prefer to know that your beliefs are matching the truth? Because you may be identifying really hard with Frank James, and then all of a sudden you misbelieve that you are INFJs like him because you identify with him, when the reality of the situation is you're actually INFPs. So be careful. Be very careful about that. All right, let's check out, see if there's any questions of value here. How can INFPs overcome the fear of their valuable voice being put down? That your voice will always be put down. Everyone's voice is put down. So just accept it as part of life and get over yourselves and do it anyway. Okay? That's a great question. Thank you, Danushka Day, for saying that. Yes, I do remember that group of kids. The thing is, I don't know why that episode was never actually posted. Gotta find it. Gotta find that episode. Okay. Let's see. Yes, I read the comments. Always do. I don't read replies as much. Just your first comment and then I'll reply to it. But if you reply back, I'm probably not going to read that. Just letting you know. Reading with T inferior is so annoying. You have to look up every word, even words you know the meaning of or can deduce the meaning of with context. T inferior is overly meticulous. Well, that's a good thing, Randolph Milton. It's a very good thing. Because you have to overdo it. You have to overdo everything in order to perform. All right. Is Machiavelli really an ENTP? He might be an INTJ. I don't know. I haven't really tried to type him. Should probably reread The Prince. Maybe I can do some typing by text on him and find out. Should probably reread The Prince. It's been a while. Anyway, folks, thanks for watching and listening. Like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys on the next episode.